The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training grounds as Sarah Martinez stepped off the transport bus, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder and determination etched across her face. At 22 years old, she stood barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, her slight frame making her appear even younger among the towering structures of Fort Harrison. The other recruits who had arrived with her were mostly men, their voices booming with bravado as they discussed their plans to dominate basic training. Sarah kept to herself as they were herded toward the registration building, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation ponytail, and her civilian clothes soon to be replaced with the standard-issue uniform that would mark her transformation from ordinary citizen to soldier. She had dreamed of this moment for years, ever since she was a little girl watching her grandfather's old war movies and listening to his stories about courage under fire. The registration process was a blur of paperwork, medical examinations, and stern-faced sergeants barking orders. Sarah noticed how some of the other recruits seemed to naturally gravitate toward leadership roles, their confident voices cutting through the chaos as they helped organize lines and distribute information. She admired their ease, but felt more comfortable observing, taking mental notes of everything she witnessed. Her bunkmates were assigned quickly, and Sarah found herself sharing quarters with 3 other women who seemed to have already formed a tight-knit group. Jennifer Walsh was a tall blonde from Texas, who spoke with unwavering confidence about her athletic achievements in high school. Maria Santos came from a military family and carried herself with the bearing of someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. The third woman, Amanda Chen, was quiet like Sarah, but possessed an intensity that suggested depths of strength beneath her reserved exterior. The first few days of basic training were brutal in ways Sarah had never imagined. The physical demands were enormous, but it was the psychological pressure that truly tested her limits. Drill Sergeant Morrison was an intimidating figure who seemed to take particular pleasure in identifying the weaknesses of each recruit and exploiting them mercilessly. Sarah watched as grown men broke down in tears after being subjected to his withering criticism. During morning physical training, Sarah struggled to keep pace with the larger recruits during distance running, but she noticed that her endurance was actually superior to many of them. While others gasped for air after the first mile, she maintained steady breathing and found her rhythm. Her small stature, which seemed like a disadvantage in so many other areas, actually served her well in activities requiring agility and sustained effort. The obstacle course became Sarah's proving ground. While other recruits relied on brute strength to muscle their way over walls and through barriers, she developed techniques that maximized efficiency over power. She learned to use momentum and precise timing to accomplish tasks that initially seemed impossible for someone of her size. Other recruits began to notice her performance, though not all of their attention was positive. A group of male recruits, led by a large man named Derek Phillips, started making comments about Sarah's presence in their unit. Phillips was from a small town where traditional gender roles were deeply ingrained, and he made no secret of his belief that women had no place in combat training. His followers included Tommy Russo, a former high school football player who seemed to view military service as an extension of the locker room culture he had known, and Mike Chen, who, despite sharing a surname with Amanda, held vastly different views about women's capabilities. The comments started small. Phillips would make jokes about how Sarah needed help reaching high shelves or carrying heavy equipment. Russo would loudly wonder whether the military was becoming too soft by allowing women to serve alongside men. Chen would shake his head whenever Sarah struggled with a particular exercise, making exaggerated sighing sounds that were meant to convey his disapproval of the situation. Sarah's response to this treatment was to work harder. She arrived at training earlier than required and stayed later to practice skills she found challenging. Her determination impressed some of the other recruits, particularly those who came from backgrounds where hard work was valued above natural talent. But it also seemed to intensify the criticism from Phillips and his group, who interpreted her extra efforts as proof that women required special accommodation to meet basic standards. The situation escalated during a particularly challenging training exercise designed to simulate combat conditions. Recruits were required to navigate a complex course while carrying full combat gear, including weapons, ammunition, and emergency supplies. The course included crawling under barbed wire, scaling walls, crossing water obstacles, and completing various tactical challenges under time pressure. Sarah had prepared extensively for this exercise, studying the course layout and practicing individual components whenever possible. She understood that this would be a crucial test of her abilities and was determined to perform well. However, as the exercise began, Phillips and his followers positioned themselves near her starting point and began offering loud commentary on her prospects for success. "This should be entertaining," Phillips announced to his companions as Sarah adjusted her equipment. "I give her about 10 minutes before she's crying for help." His voice was intentionally loud enough for Sarah and several other recruits to hear clearly. Russo joined in with his own observations. "Maybe we should have a betting pool on whether she even finishes the course. I'm thinking the smart money is on a dramatic rescue mission somewhere around the halfway point." The comment drew laughter from several other male recruits who had gathered to watch the proceedings. Chen added his own contribution to the mockery. "I just hope they don't expect the rest of us to slow down and wait for her when we're doing this for real. Some of us actually want to serve our country effectively, not play games to make everyone feel included." His words carried a particularly sharp edge that suggested deeper resentment about changing military policies. Sarah heard every word but maintained her focus on the task ahead. She had learned from her grandfather that the best response to doubt was performance, not argument. She checked her equipment one final time, took a deep breath, and approached the starting line with the same calm determination she had shown throughout her training. The whistle blew, and Sarah launched into the course with explosive energy. Her first obstacle was a series of log barriers that required precise footwork and balance. While other recruits attempted to simply power over these obstacles, Sarah used a fluid running technique that maintained her momentum while conserving energy. She cleared the logs cleanly and moved immediately to the next challenge. The barbed wire crawl was where many recruits lost significant time, either by moving too cautiously or by getting caught in the wire due to poor technique. Sarah had studied this obstacle extensively and developed a specific approach that maximized speed while minimizing risk. She dropped into a low crawl that kept her body profile as flat as possible while allowing for efficient forward movement. As she emerged from under the wire, Sarah could hear Phillips and his friends continuing their commentary, though their tone was beginning to shift slightly. "She's moving pretty well for now," Phillips admitted grudgingly. "But wait until she hits the wall climb. That's where upper body strength really matters, and that's where reality is going to set in for her." The wall climb was indeed a formidable obstacle, standing 12 feet high with minimal hand and footholds. Sarah had struggled with this challenge during practice sessions, but she had also spent considerable time developing a technique that worked with her body type rather than against it. Instead of attempting to muscle her way up the wall like larger recruits, she used a careful combination of leverage and momentum. Sarah approached the wall with controlled speed and began her climb using a diagonal pattern that distributed the stress across different muscle groups. Her technique was not particularly fast, but it was remarkably efficient and sustainable. She reached the top of the wall without the obvious struggle that many other recruits experienced, and her descent was equally controlled. The water obstacle consisted of a muddy pond that recruits were required to cross while keeping their weapons dry. This challenge tested both physical endurance and equipment management skills. Sarah had observed that many recruits made the mistake of rushing through this obstacle, which often resulted in slipping, falling, or dropping essential gear. Sarah waded into the water with deliberate care, maintaining her balance while keeping her rifle elevated above the surface. The cold water was a shock to her system, but she had mentally prepared for this sensation and maintained her focus on proper technique. Her crossing was steady and methodical, and she emerged from the pond with all her equipment intact and properly positioned. Phillips and his followers had grown noticeably quieter as Sarah progressed through the course. Their initial confidence in her failure was being challenged by her consistent performance, though they were not yet ready to abandon their skepticism entirely. "She's doing better than I expected," Russo admitted reluctantly, "but we haven't seen the really tough stuff yet. Wait until she hits the rope climb and the heavy carry sections." The rope climb was a 20-foot vertical challenge that required significant upper body and core strength. Many recruits struggled with this obstacle, and it was often where smaller individuals found their limitations most clearly exposed. Sarah knew this would be one of her greatest challenges, but she had spent weeks developing specific techniques for maximizing her climbing efficiency. Sarah approached the rope with the same calm focus she had maintained throughout the course. She wrapped the rope around her leg in a specific pattern that would support her body weight while allowing her to use her leg muscles to assist with the climb. Her ascent was slower than that of larger recruits, but it was steady and controlled. She reached the top of the rope without any signs of panic or exhaustion. Her descent was equally impressive, using a controlled slide technique that allowed her to reach the ground quickly while maintaining safety. As her feet touched the earth, Sarah could see that her performance was beginning to earn genuine respect from observers who had initially dismissed her capabilities. The heavy carry portion of the course required recruits to transport a wounded comrade simulation, which consisted of a 150-pound dummy that had to be moved across varied terrain for a distance of 200 yards. This was the challenge that Phillips and his followers had been most confident would expose Sarah's limitations, as it seemed to directly test raw physical strength. Sarah studied the dummy and the terrain she would need to cross. The route included uneven ground, small hills, and several obstacles that would require careful maneuvering. Rather than attempting to simply lift and carry the heavy load, Sarah experimented with different techniques for moving the dummy efficiently across different types of terrain. For flat sections, Sarah used a dragging technique that leveraged her lower body strength and allowed her to maintain steady progress without exhausting herself. When she encountered hills or obstacles, she switched to a lifting and maneuvering approach that broke the challenge into smaller, manageable segments. Her overall time for this section was not the fastest recorded, but it was well within acceptable parameters and demonstrated creative problem-solving under pressure. As Sarah completed the final obstacles and crossed the finish line, she could sense a shift in the atmosphere around her. The jeers and jokes from Phillips and his group had faded to thoughtful silence. Other recruits who had initially been neutral observers were now looking at her with expressions of genuine respect and interest. Drill Sergeant Morrison approached Sarah as she completed her equipment check and prepared to join the other finished recruits. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried a tone of professional assessment rather than criticism. "Martinez," he said, consulting his stopwatch and clipboard, "your overall time puts you in the top 15% of today's participants. Your technique on several obstacles showed innovation and tactical thinking. Well done." The sergeant's words were heard clearly by everyone in the immediate area, including Phillips and his followers. The official recognition of Sarah's performance made it difficult for anyone to continue dismissing her abilities as inadequate or unsuitable for military service. That evening, as recruits gathered in the barracks to discuss the day's training, the conversation about Sarah's performance continued. Some of the men who had initially joined in with Phillips' mockery were now reconsidering their positions. Others remained skeptical but were less willing to voice their doubts openly after witnessing her successful completion of the challenging course. Sarah herself remained focused on continuous improvement rather than celebrating her success. She knew that one good performance did not guarantee future success, and she was already analyzing areas where she could refine her techniques and build additional strength. Her grandfather had taught her that true military excellence required consistency and constant growth, not just occasional achievements. Jennifer Walsh approached Sarah that evening as she was reviewing her equipment and preparing for the next day's training. "That was incredible out there today," Jennifer said with genuine admiration. "I've been struggling with some of those obstacles myself, and watching your technique gave me some ideas for my own approach." Maria Santos joined the conversation, adding her own observations about Sarah's performance. "My father always told me that the best soldiers are the ones who find ways to succeed regardless of their initial advantages or disadvantages," she said. "What you did today was exactly what he was talking about. You turned your size into an advantage instead of letting it become a limitation." Amanda Chen, who had been quietly observing the day's events, offered her own perspective. "I think what impressed me most was how you stayed focused on your own performance instead of getting distracted by all the commentary from the sidelines," she said. "That kind of mental discipline is going to serve you well throughout your military career." The conversation was overheard by several other recruits, including some who had been part of Phillips's group. The positive recognition Sarah was receiving from her fellow female recruits seemed to carry significant weight with observers who were still forming their own opinions about her capabilities and place in their unit. As the evening progressed and recruits settled into their evening routines, Sarah reflected on the day's events and their broader significance. She understood that she had passed an important test, but she also knew that greater challenges lay ahead. Basic training was designed to progressively increase in difficulty, and she would need to maintain her high standards of performance throughout the entire program. The whispers and conversations continued around the barracks that night, with various recruits sharing their observations and theories about what they had witnessed during the day's training. Some focused on Sarah's innovative techniques and tactical thinking. Others discussed the broader implications of her success for assumptions about gender roles in military service. A few continued to express skepticism, though their voices were notably quieter than they had been that morning. Phillips and his core group of followers gathered in a corner of the barracks to discuss their own perspectives on the day's events. Their conversation was more subdued than their earlier commentary, reflecting a growing uncertainty about positions they had previously held with absolute confidence. "I still think this whole situation is problematic," Phillips said, though his voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. "One good performance doesn't change the fundamental physical differences we're dealing with here. There's going to come a time when technique and determination aren't enough, and when that happens, lives could be at stake." Russo nodded agreement but seemed less certain than he had been that morning. "I hear what you're saying, and I'm not ready to completely change my mind based on one training exercise," he said. "But I have to admit, some of the things she did out there were pretty impressive. Maybe there's more to this situation than I originally thought." Chen remained the most vocal critic of the group, though even his comments carried less venom than they had earlier. "Look, I respect what she accomplished today," he said. "But we're training to be soldiers, not to participate in some kind of social experiment. The enemy isn't going to care about our feelings or our commitment to equality when the shooting starts. They're going to exploit any weakness they can find, and physical limitations are exactly the kind of weaknesses they'll target." The debate continued in various forms throughout the barracks, with different groups of recruits offering their own interpretations of what they had observed. Some saw Sarah's performance as validation of changing military policies and evolving understanding of combat effectiveness. Others viewed it as an interesting anomaly that did not necessarily change their fundamental beliefs about gender roles in military service. Sarah was aware of these ongoing discussions, but chose not to participate directly in them. She understood that her actions would ultimately speak more loudly than any arguments she might make, and she was determined to let her performance continue to define her place in the unit. Her focus remained on preparing for the next day's challenges and maintaining the high standards she had set for herself. As lights out approached and the barracks gradually settled into quiet, Sarah lay in her bunk thinking about her grandfather's stories and the legacy of service she was now part of. She knew that she was representing something larger than herself, and that knowledge both motivated and sobered her. Tomorrow would bring new tests and new opportunities to prove herself worthy of the uniform she wore. The events of this first major training exercise had established Sarah as a serious contender, rather than a token presence in her unit. However, they had also intensified the scrutiny she would face in future challenges. Some recruits were now genuinely curious to see how she would handle even more difficult tests. Others remained skeptical and were waiting for her to encounter obstacles that would confirm their original doubts about her suitability for military service. The stage was set for an ongoing evaluation of Sarah's capabilities and determination, with each subsequent training exercise carrying additional weight and significance. Her initial success had earned her the right to be taken seriously, but it had also raised expectations and increased the pressure she would face moving forward. The weeks following Sarah's impressive performance on the obstacle course brought new challenges that tested every aspect of her military training. Advanced combat simulations replaced basic physical exercises, and the pressure on all recruits intensified as drill sergeants pushed them toward their breaking points. Sarah found herself under even greater scrutiny than before, with both supporters and skeptics watching her every move for signs of either continued excellence or eventual failure. Weapons training introduced a new dimension to the competitive dynamics within the unit. Sarah had grown up around firearms thanks to her grandfather's influence, but military weapons required a different level of precision and understanding than the hunting rifles she had used in her youth. The M16 rifle felt heavy in her hands initially, and she struggled with some of the technical aspects of maintenance and operation that came more naturally to recruits with extensive shooting backgrounds. Derek Phillips seemed to view weapons training as an opportunity to reassert his earlier criticisms of Sarah's presence in the unit. During range practice, he made loud observations about her shooting stance and grip technique, offering unsolicited advice that was clearly intended more for the entertainment of his followers than for Sarah's actual improvement. His comments carried an undertone of condescension that suggested he viewed her struggles as evidence of fundamental unsuitability for military service. Martinez is going to need to get a lot more comfortable with that rifle if she wants to keep up with the rest of us, Phillips announced during one particularly challenging shooting exercise. In real combat, there's no time for second chances or learning on the job. Either you can hit your targets when it matters, or you become a liability to everyone around you. Tommy Russo joined in with his own observations, focusing on the physical demands of carrying and maneuvering military weapons over extended periods. I'm just wondering how she's going to handle a full combat load when we get to the advanced field exercises, he said. The rifle is just one piece of equipment. Add in ammunition, body armor, communications gear, and everything else, and we're talking about a completely different level of physical demand. Mike Chen remained the most vocal critic, though his comments had become more sophisticated since Sarah's successful performance on the obstacle course. Rather than making crude jokes about her abilities, he now framed his concerns in terms of unit effectiveness and mission success. "I'm not questioning her determination or her character," he would say when discussing Sarah with other recruits, "but determination doesn't change physics. There are going to be situations where raw physical capability is the determining factor, and when those situations arise, everyone's life depends on everyone else being able to perform at the required level." Sarah absorbed this criticism while focusing intensely on improving her weapons proficiency. She spent extra time on the range during optional practice sessions, working with different shooting positions and learning to compensate for the physical challenges she faced with standard-issue equipment. Her marksmanship scores improved steadily, though they remained below the levels achieved by recruits with extensive shooting backgrounds. The breakthrough came during a complex shooting exercise that required recruits to engage multiple targets while moving through a simulated urban environment. The course was designed to test not just accuracy but also tactical thinking, target prioritization, and the ability to maintain effectiveness under stress. Sarah approached this challenge with the same analytical mindset she had applied to the obstacle course, studying the layout carefully and developing a specific strategy for maximizing her performance. Instead of attempting to match the rapid-fire techniques used by larger recruits, Sarah focused on precision and efficiency. She identified the most critical targets first and engaged them with carefully aimed shots that conserved ammunition while achieving maximum tactical impact. Her movement through the course was deliberate and controlled, allowing her to maintain accuracy while avoiding exposure to simulated enemy fire. When the exercise concluded and scores were announced, Sarah's performance placed her in the top 10% of participants. Her accuracy rate was actually higher than many of the recruits who had initially outperformed her in basic marksmanship, and her tactical decision-making received specific praise from the range instructors. The success was particularly satisfying because it demonstrated that technical skill and strategic thinking could overcome raw physical advantages. The positive recognition Sarah received for her weapons performance began to shift opinions among some recruits who had remained skeptical after her obstacle course success. Staff Sergeant Williams, who supervised advanced weapons training, made specific comments about Sarah's improvement and tactical awareness that were heard throughout the unit. "Martinez has demonstrated exactly the kind of adaptive learning and tactical thinking that defines effective soldiers," Williams announced after reviewing the exercise results. "Her ability to analyze challenges and develop effective responses shows the kind of military intelligence that will serve her well throughout her career. This is the standard I expect all recruits to meet." The sergeant's comments carried particular weight because Williams was known for his extremely high standards and reluctance to offer praise unless it was truly deserved. His public recognition of Sarah's performance made it difficult for anyone to dismiss her success as a result of lowered standards or special accommodation. Hand-to-hand combat training presented Sarah with perhaps her greatest physical challenge yet. The techniques taught in military combat training were designed for situations where firearms were not available or practical, and they required a combination of strength, speed, and tactical awareness that tested every recruit's limits. SSA's size disadvantage was most apparent in these exercises, where she was often paired against much larger opponents. Phillips and his followers viewed combat training as the ultimate test of Sarah's suitability for military service. They watched her early sparring sessions with obvious anticipation, expecting to finally witness the decisive failure they had been predicting since her arrival. Phillips himself was paired against Sarah during one training session, and he approached the match with barely concealed satisfaction at the opportunity to demonstrate what he viewed as obvious physical realities. The match began with Phillips attempting to use his size and strength advantage to overpower Sarah quickly. He relied on aggressive tactics designed to end the fight through brute force, expecting that Sarah would be unable to mount any effective resistance. However, Sarah had been studying combat techniques intensively and had developed strategies specifically designed to work with her body type rather than against it. Instead of engaging Phillips in a direct strength competition, Sarah used movement and leverage to neutralize his advantages. She avoided his initial aggressive attacks and used his momentum against him, applying techniques that redirected his energy rather than attempting to match it directly. Her approach was defensive initially, but it allowed her to tire Phillips while conserving her own energy for strategic counterattacks. As the match progressed, Phillips became increasingly frustrated with his inability to land decisive blows against Sarah's mobile defense. His attacks became less controlled and more predictable, creating openings that Sarah was able to exploit with precise counterstrikes. Her technique was not particularly powerful, but it was accurate and well-timed, targeting pressure points and vulnerable areas that maximized the impact of her smaller frame. The match concluded when Sarah successfully executed a throwing technique that used Phillips's own weight and momentum to bring him to the ground. The throw was perfectly executed and demonstrated a level of technical skill that impressed both instructors and fellow recruits. Phillips found himself on his back, looking up at Sarah with an expression of shock and confusion that reflected his complete surprise at the outcome. The instructor, Master Sergeant Rodriguez, used the match as a teaching moment for the entire class. "What you just witnessed demonstrates the difference between fighting and combat," he explained to the gathered recruits. "Fighting relies on size, strength, and aggression. Combat requires technique, strategy, and adaptability. Martinez just showed you what real combat effectiveness looks like." Rodriguez's analysis of the match focused on specific technical elements that Sarah had executed correctly, pointing out how she had used proper leverage and timing to overcome a significant size disadvantage. His explanation helped other recruits understand that what they had witnessed was not a fluke or accident, but the result of skilled application of proven military combat techniques. The impact of Sarah's victory over Phillips extended far beyond the immediate training session. Phillips himself seemed genuinely shaken by the experience, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty and confusion. His followers were equally affected, forced to reconsider assumptions they had held with absolute certainty just moments before. Russo approached Sarah after the combat session, his earlier mockery replaced by genuine curiosity about her techniques. "I have to ask," he said, "where did you learn to fight like that? That was not what any of us expected to see, and I'm trying to understand how you made it work against someone with Phillips's size advantage." Sarah explained her approach to combat training, describing how she had studied the techniques intensively and practiced them with a focus on precision rather than power. She emphasized that her success came from understanding the principles behind the techniques rather than relying on natural physical ability. Her explanation was technical and educational, demonstrating the depth of thought she had put into developing her combat skills. Maria Santos, who had been watching the match closely, offered her own observations about what had occurred. "What impressed me most was how calm you stayed under pressure," she said. "Phillips was trying to intimidate you with aggressive tactics, but you never lost your focus or abandoned your strategy. That kind of mental discipline is exactly what they're trying to teach us in these exercises." The conversation attracted other recruits who were eager to understand the techniques Sarah had demonstrated. Her willingness to explain her approach and share her learning process began to change her role within the unit from someone who was merely being evaluated to someone who could contribute to everyone's improvement. Advanced field exercises introduced new levels of complexity that tested all aspects of military training simultaneously. Recruits were required to complete multi-day missions that combined physical endurance, tactical decision-making, teamwork, and technical skills under conditions designed to simulate real combat environments. These exercises pushed everyone to their limits and revealed strengths and weaknesses that had not been apparent in individual skill assessments. Sarah's performance during field exercises continued to surprise both supporters and skeptics. Her endurance proved to be exceptional, allowing her to maintain effectiveness over extended periods when many larger recruits began to struggle with fatigue. Her tactical awareness contributed significantly to her team's success in complex scenarios that required coordination and strategic thinking. During one particularly challenging night mission, Sarah's team was tasked with infiltrating a simulated enemy position and gathering intelligence without being detected. The mission required careful navigation, stealth techniques, and the ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Sarah's natural caution and analytical approach proved ideal for this type of challenge. She took point during the infiltration, using her smaller profile and careful movement techniques to scout ahead while minimizing the risk of detection. Her observations and tactical recommendations helped her team avoid several potential ambush points and identify the optimal approach to their target. When unexpected complications arose, Sarah's quick thinking and adaptability helped the team adjust their strategies successfully. The mission concluded with Sarah's team achieving all primary objectives while avoiding detection, a result that placed them among the top-performing units in the exercise. The success was particularly notable because several teams composed of physically larger and more traditionally impressive recruits had failed to complete their missions successfully. Captain Morrison, who had been observing the field exercises closely, made specific comments about Sarah's contributions during the mission debrief. Martinez demonstrated exactly the kind of tactical thinking and adaptability that defines successful special operations, he said. Her ability to assess situations quickly and make effective decisions under pressure is a model for what we expect from all our soldiers. The captain's recognition carried significant weight because it came from an officer known for his extensive combat experience and high standards. His public acknowledgement of Sarah's tactical capabilities began to shift the conversation within the unit from questions about her basic suitability to recognition of her potential for advanced roles and responsibilities. Advanced leadership exercises presented new challenges that tested recruits' ability to make decisions under pressure and coordinate team activities effectively. Sarah found herself assigned to leadership positions more frequently as instructors recognized her tactical awareness and decision-making abilities. These assignments placed her in charge of teams that included some of the same recruits who had initially questioned her presence in the unit. During one complex leadership exercise, Sarah was tasked with coordinating a simulated rescue mission that required precise timing and coordination among multiple team elements. The scenario involved extracting wounded personnel from a hostile environment while managing limited resources and adapting to changing tactical conditions. The exercise was designed to test every aspect of military leadership under extreme pressure. Sarah approached the challenge with characteristic thoroughness, analyzing all available information and developing a detailed plan that maximized their chances of success while minimizing risk to team members. She assigned roles based on each person's strengths and ensured that everyone understood both their individual responsibilities and how their actions fit into the overall mission strategy. The execution of the mission required Sarah to make rapid decisions as circumstances evolved beyond their original planning assumptions. She demonstrated the ability to adapt quickly while maintaining clear communication with all team members. Her leadership style was collaborative rather than authoritarian, seeking input from team members while maintaining final decision-making authority. Phillips found himself serving under Sarah's command during this exercise, a role reversal that created obvious tension for both participants. However, Sarah's professional approach and tactical competence gradually earned his cooperation, if not his enthusiasm. By the end of the mission, Phillips was following Sarah's orders promptly and effectively, contributing to the team's overall success. The mission concluded with complete achievement of all primary objectives within the specified time parameters. Sarah's team received the highest performance rating among all participating units, with specific recognition for their coordination, adaptability, and leadership effectiveness. The success represented a significant milestone in Sarah's military training and her standing within the unit. During the debrief session, instructors highlighted specific aspects of Sarah's leadership performance that had contributed to the mission's success. Her ability to remain calm under pressure, communicate clearly with team members, and adapt quickly to changing circumstances were cited as examples of effective military leadership that all recruits should strive to emulate. The recognition Sarah received for her leadership performance marked a significant shift in how she was perceived within the unit. Recruits who had initially viewed her as an uncertain experiment were now beginning to see her as a genuinely capable soldier who could contribute meaningfully to team effectiveness. Even some of her original critics were forced to acknowledge that her performance consistently exceeded expectations. Evening discussions in the barracks began to include more positive commentary about Sarah's contributions to various training exercises. Recruits shared observations about techniques she had demonstrated, or tactical decisions that had impressed them during recent missions. The tone of these conversations was markedly different from the skeptical commentary that had characterized earlier discussions. Jennifer Walsh expressed what many recruits were beginning to feel about Sarah's place in the unit. "I think we're witnessing something pretty special here," she said during one evening conversation. "Sarah isn't just proving that women can serve effectively in combat roles. She's demonstrating a level of tactical thinking and leadership ability that stands out regardless of gender." Amanda Chen agreed with Jennifer's assessment, adding her own observations about Sarah's impact on unit dynamics. "What I find most impressive is how she's maintained her focus on continuous improvement rather than getting caught up in all the political aspects of her situation," she said. "She's approached every challenge as an opportunity to develop her skills rather than as a test of some broader social issue." The conversation was overheard by several male recruits, including some who had been part of Phillips's original group of critics. Their responses were notably more thoughtful and respectful than the crude commentary that had characterized earlier discussions. The quality of Sarah's performance was making it increasingly difficult to maintain positions based purely on prejudice rather than observable evidence. As weeks passed and training intensified, Sarah continued to demonstrate consistent excellence across all aspects of military preparation. Her technical skills improved steadily, her physical conditioning reached impressive levels despite her initial size disadvantage, and her leadership abilities became increasingly recognized by both instructors and fellow recruits. Each success built upon previous achievements, creating a pattern of excellence that could not be dismissed or explained away. The skeptics within the unit were finding it increasingly difficult to maintain their original positions in the face of Sarah's consistent performance. While some, like Chen, continued to express concerns about theoretical future challenges, even they were forced to acknowledge that Sarah had exceeded every measurable standard placed before her during training. The evidence of her capabilities was becoming overwhelming. Phillips himself seemed to be undergoing a gradual transformation in his thinking about Sarah and the broader questions her presence raised. While he had not openly abandoned his original skepticism, his commentary had become much more restrained and thoughtful. The direct experience of serving under her competent leadership had apparently forced him to reconsider some of his fundamental assumptions. Sarah remained focused on her own development rather than on the changing opinions around her. She understood that her performance was being scrutinized more intensively than that of other recruits, but she used that pressure as motivation for continuous improvement rather than allowing it to create stress or distraction. Her grandfather's teachings about perseverance and dedication continued to guide her approach to every challenge. The stage was being set for even more demanding tests that would push all recruits to their absolute limits. Advanced combat simulations, specialized training programs, and final qualification exercises lay ahead, each designed to identify who possessed the mental and physical capabilities required for successful military service. Sarah had established herself as a serious contender, but the ultimate tests of her abilities were still to come. The final month of basic training brought challenges that would determine which recruits possessed the complete range of capabilities required for military service. Advanced survival exercises, comprehensive combat simulations, and psychological evaluations pushed everyone to their breaking points, while testing skills that had been developing throughout the entire training program. Sarah approached these ultimate tests with the same methodical preparation that had characterized her success in earlier challenges, but she also understood that the margin for error was shrinking dramatically. Survival training took place in a remote wilderness area, where recruits were required to sustain themselves for 5 days using minimal equipment and resources. The exercise tested not only physical endurance and technical skills, but also mental toughness and the ability to make effective decisions under extreme stress. Recruits were dropped off at different locations with only basic survival gear, and were expected to navigate to designated checkpoints while obtaining food, water, and shelter from the natural environment. Sarah's team for the survival exercise included Jennifer Walsh, Maria Santos, and surprisingly, Derek Phillips. The instructor assignments were intentional, designed to test how different personality types would function together under extreme stress. Phillips had requested the assignment, stating that he wanted to observe Sarah's performance under conditions where her previous tactical innovations might be less applicable. The initial phase of the survival exercise involved establishing shelter and securing water sources before nightfall on the first day. Sarah's approach was characteristically methodical. insisting that the team take time to analyze their environment and available resources before making any permanent decisions about campsite location or shelter construction. Her caution initially frustrated Phillips, who favored immediate action over extended planning. We're burning daylight while Martinez conducts her environmental survey, Phillips complained as Sarah carefully examined potential water sources and shelter sites. In real survival situations, you need to make quick decisions and start taking action, not spend hours analyzing every possible option. Sometimes speed is more important than perfection. Jennifer Walsh supported Sarah's methodical approach, pointing out that mistakes made in haste during the initial setup could create problems throughout the entire exercise. I'd rather spend extra time now making sure we get the fundamentals right than have to deal with preventable problems later, she said. Sarah's analytical approach has worked well in other exercises, and I think we should trust her judgment here too. Maria Santos agreed with Jennifer's assessment, adding her own observations about the value of thorough preparation in survival situations. My father always taught me that survival is about making smart decisions rather than heroic gestures, she said. Taking time to understand our environment and resources seems like exactly the kind of smart decision-making that will serve us well over 5 days. Sarah's careful site selection proved valuable when weather conditions deteriorated during the first night. The location she had chosen provided natural protection from wind and rain while offering easy access to fresh water and materials for maintaining their shelter. Teams that had rushed into immediate shelter construction found themselves dealing with flooding, structural failures, and exposure to severe weather. Food procurement presented the next major challenge, requiring teams to identify edible plants, set traps for small animals, and potentially catch fish from available water sources. Sarah had studied survival techniques extensively in preparation for this exercise, learning to identify local flora and fauna that could provide sustenance. Her knowledge proved invaluable as the team worked to secure adequate nutrition for the extended exercise. Phillips watched Sarah demonstrate various food procurement techniques with obvious surprise at her expertise. She showed the team how to identify edible roots and plants while avoiding potentially dangerous alternatives. Her trap construction was efficient and effective, using principles she had learned from both military manuals and her grandfather's hunting experience. Her approach to fishing combined traditional techniques with improvised methods that maximized their chances of success. I have to admit, Martinez, you know a lot more about this survival stuff than I expected, Phillips said as Sarah successfully identified a patch of edible berries that would supplement their limited food supplies. Where did you learn all these techniques? This isn't exactly standard curriculum in most people's backgrounds. Sarah explained how her grandfather had taught her basic survival skills during hunting trips and camping expeditions throughout her childhood. She described how she had supplemented this foundation with intensive study of military survival manuals and techniques developed for various environmental conditions. Her preparation had been thorough and systematic, reflecting her understanding that survival skills could be critical for military effectiveness. Navigation to the designated checkpoints required the team to cover significant distances over challenging terrain while maintaining their energy levels and carrying essential equipment. Sarah's route planning combined efficiency with safety considerations, avoiding unnecessary risks while ensuring they would reach each checkpoint within the specified time windows. Her navigation skills proved to be exceptional, using both technological tools and traditional techniques to maintain accurate course headings. During the second day of the exercise, the team encountered a simulated medical emergency that tested their ability to provide first aid and make evacuation decisions under field conditions. One team member, played by an instructor, exhibited symptoms of severe dehydration and heat exhaustion that required immediate medical attention and potentially evacuation from the exercise area. Sarah took charge of the medical situation with calm efficiency, applying first aid techniques while coordinating with her team members to arrange for evacuation support. Her response demonstrated both technical competence and leadership ability under extreme pressure. She managed the immediate medical crisis while ensuring that the team's overall mission objectives remained achievable. Phillips found himself following Sarah's medical directives without question, recognizing that her training and decision-making capabilities were potentially life-saving in the simulated emergency. His cooperation was complete and professional, reflecting a growing respect for Sarah's comprehensive military capabilities. The experience of working under her leadership during a crisis situation seemed to shift his perspective about her suitability for military service. The medical evacuation scenario required the team to signal for helicopter extraction while maintaining security protocols and protecting sensitive information about their mission objectives. Sarah coordinated the evacuation process effectively, communicating with rescue personnel while ensuring that operational security was maintained. Her performance during this complex scenario earned recognition from evaluating instructors. Advanced combat simulations during the final weeks of training tested all aspects of military preparation simultaneously. Recruits participated in complex scenarios that required coordination between multiple teams, integration of different weapons systems, and rapid adaptation to changing tactical conditions. These exercises represented the culmination of months of preparation and would determine final rankings and specialty assignments. Sarah's role in combat simulations evolved to include positions of significant responsibility as instructors recognized her tactical awareness and leadership capabilities. She was assigned to coordinate communications between different units, plan and execute complex maneuvers, and make strategic decisions that affected overall mission success. Her performance in these roles would be crucial for her final evaluation and future military career path. During one particularly challenging simulation, Sarah's unit was tasked with securing a strategic position while coordinating with air support and artillery units. The scenario required precise timing, clear communication, and the ability to adapt quickly to simulated enemy countermeasures. Sarah served as the primary coordinator for the operation, responsible for managing multiple information sources and making tactical recommendations to the commanding officer. The simulation began with Sarah's unit advancing on their objective under cover of darkness, using stealth techniques to avoid detection while positioning themselves for the coordinated assault. Sarah monitored communications from reconnaissance elements, tracked the positions of friendly and enemy forces, and maintained constant communication with supporting units. Her situational awareness was exceptional, allowing her to provide accurate tactical updates throughout the operation. When the assault phase began, unexpected complications arose that required immediate adaptation of the original battle plan. Simulated enemy forces had reinforced the target position, and weather conditions had grounded the planned air support. Sarah recommended alternative approaches that utilized available resources while maintaining operational security and minimizing risk to friendly forces. Her tactical recommendations included redeploying certain units to exploit weaknesses in the revised enemy positions, adjusting the timing of supporting artillery strikes to compensate for the lack of air support, and establishing alternative communication protocols to maintain coordination if primary systems were compromised. Her suggestions demonstrated sophisticated understanding of military tactics and the ability to think strategically under pressure. The execution of Sarah's modified battle plan required precise coordination and timing among multiple units operating under challenging conditions. She maintained continuous communication with all elements while monitoring the overall tactical situation and recommending further adjustments as circumstances continued to evolve. Her performance as a tactical coordinator was exceptional, contributing significantly to the mission's ultimate success. When the simulation concluded, the unit had achieved all primary objectives while suffering minimal simulated casualties. The after-action review highlighted specific aspects of Sarah's tactical coordination that had contributed to the successful outcome. Her ability to process multiple information sources, make rapid tactical decisions, and communicate effectively under pressure earned recognition from senior officers observing the exercise. Colonel Harrison, the commanding officer responsible for overall evaluation of recruit performance, made specific comments about Sarah's contributions during the complex combat simulation. Martinez demonstrated exactly the kind of tactical thinking and coordination ability that we look for in our most promising junior officers, he said. Her performance during this exercise shows potential for significant advancement and specialization in tactical operations. The colonel's recognition represented a major milestone in Sarah's military career and her standing within the training unit. His comments were heard by all participants in the exercise, including those who had remained skeptical about her capabilities despite her consistent high performance throughout training. The official recognition from such a senior officer made it difficult for anyone to continue questioning her suitability for military service. Phillips approached Sarah after the combat simulation debrief, his demeanor markedly different from the hostile skepticism he had displayed during their early training. "I need to say something to you, Martinez," he said, his voice carrying a tone of genuine respect that had been absent from all their previous interactions. "I was wrong about you. Not just partially wrong, or wrong about some things. I was completely wrong about your capabilities and what you could contribute to military service." Sarah listened to Philip's acknowledgement with characteristic calm, neither gloating over his change of heart nor dismissing the sincerity of his admission. "I appreciate you saying that, Phillips," she replied. "I know it wasn't easy to change your perspective, and I respect the fact that you were willing to let evidence override your initial assumptions. That kind of adaptability is exactly what makes someone an effective soldier." Phillips continued his reflection on the evolution of his thinking about Sarah's place in the military. "What really changed my mind wasn't just watching your performance, although that was impressive enough," he said. "It was working with you directly and seeing how your approach to problems actually made our entire team more effective. You brought capabilities that none of us had, and that made all of us better at what we were trying to accomplish." The conversation between Sarah and Phillips was observed by other recruits, many of whom were experiencing their own evolution in thinking about gender roles in military service. Tommy Russo and Mike Chen, Phillips's original followers in criticizing Sarah's presence, found themselves reconsidering positions they had held with absolute certainty just months earlier. The evidence of Sarah's capabilities had become too overwhelming to ignore. Specialized training opportunities became available to top-performing recruits during the final weeks of basic training, offering advanced preparation in areas such as intelligence analysis, special operations, and tactical coordination. Sarah's consistent high performance throughout training made her eligible for several of these specialized programs, each of which represented a pathway to significant responsibility and advancement within the military hierarchy. The intelligence analysis track appealed to Sarah's analytical nature and tactical thinking abilities. The program offered training in information processing, strategic assessment, and the kind of complex decision-making that supported high-level military operations. Sarah's performance during training exercises had demonstrated exactly the kind of capabilities that intelligence work required, making her a natural candidate for this specialization. Special operations training represented the most physically and mentally demanding option available, requiring exceptional performance in all aspects of military preparation, plus additional capabilities in areas such as advanced combat techniques, specialized equipment operation, and unconventional warfare tactics. Sarah's interest in this path reflected her desire to serve in roles where her unique combination of skills could contribute most effectively to military objectives. The selection process for specialized training programs involved comprehensive evaluations that tested every aspect of recruit development during basic training. Physical fitness, technical skills, tactical awareness, leadership ability, and psychological resilience were all assessed through various exercises and examinations designed to identify recruits with the potential for advanced military roles. Sarah's evaluation scores placed her in the top 5% of all recruits in her training cycle, with particularly high marks in areas such as tactical thinking, adaptability under pressure, and leadership effectiveness. Her physical fitness scores, while not the highest in absolute terms, were rated as exceptional when adjusted for her body type and the innovative techniques she had developed to maximize her effectiveness. The psychological evaluation component of the selection process revealed Sarah's exceptional mental resilience and emotional stability under stress. Evaluators noted her ability to maintain focus and decision-making capability, even under extreme pressure, characteristics that were considered essential for success in demanding military roles. Her scores in this area were among the highest recorded for any recruit in recent training cycles. During the final interview process for specialized training selection, Sarah met with senior officers who evaluated her motivation, career objectives, and potential for continued development within military service. These interviews tested not only her technical knowledge and tactical understanding, but also her ability to articulate complex ideas and demonstrate the kind of strategic thinking required for leadership positions. Colonel Harrison conducted Sarah's final evaluation interview personally, reflecting the high regard in which her training performance was held by senior leadership. The interview covered her experiences during basic training, her analysis of various challenges she had faced, and her perspectives on future military service objectives. Sarah's responses demonstrated both technical competence and mature judgment that impressed the interviewing panel. "Martinez, your performance throughout basic training has been exceptional by any measure," Colonel Harrison said during the interview. You've consistently exceeded expectations while demonstrating exactly the kind of adaptability and leadership potential that we value most highly. However, I want to understand your perspective on the broader significance of your success. How do you view your role in relation to changing military policies and evolving understanding of combat effectiveness? Sarah's response was thoughtful and measured, reflecting the careful consideration she had given to these questions throughout her training experience. Sir, I believe my role is to serve my country as effectively as possible, using whatever capabilities I possess to contribute to military objectives, she said. I hope that my performance demonstrates that effectiveness in military service depends on a combination of physical capability, technical skill, tactical thinking, and mental resilience rather than any single characteristic. She continued her response by addressing the broader implications of her training experience. I understand that my presence here represents broader questions about military service and combat roles, she said. But I believe the most important contribution I can make to those discussions is to perform at the highest possible level and let my actions speak for themselves. If my service helps expand opportunities for others who can contribute effectively to military objectives, then I'm pleased to play that role. The colonel was impressed by Sarah's mature perspective on her situation and the broader issues it represented. Her focus on effectiveness and service rather than personal recognition or political considerations demonstrated exactly the kind of professional attitude that senior leadership valued most highly. Her response confirmed that she possessed not only the technical skills required for advanced military service, but also the judgment and character needed for positions of significant responsibility. Final graduation ceremonies marked the successful completion of basic training for those recruits who had met all requirements and demonstrated readiness for continued military service. Sarah's outstanding performance throughout training earned her recognition as one of the honor graduates, a distinction reserved for recruits who had demonstrated exceptional capability across all evaluated areas. The recognition represented official acknowledgement of her successful transition from civilian to soldier. The graduation ceremony included presentations to family members who had traveled to witness this milestone in their relatives' military careers. Sarah's grandfather attended the ceremony, his pride evident as he watched his granddaughter receive recognition for her achievements. His presence represented a connection to military traditions and values that had influenced Sarah's approach to service throughout her training experience. During the ceremony, Colonel Harrison delivered remarks that highlighted the achievements of the graduating class and their readiness for continued military service. His comments included specific recognition of recruits who had demonstrated exceptional performance and potential for advancement. Sarah was among those receiving individual recognition for outstanding achievement during training. Private Martinez represents exactly the kind of soldier our military needs for the challenges we face in modern warfare, Colonel Harrison said in his remarks. Her combination of technical skill, tactical thinking, and leadership ability, along with her demonstrated adaptability and mental resilience, marks her as someone with exceptional potential for continued service and advancement. She has earned her place among our finest soldiers through performance that speaks for itself. The colonel's public recognition of Sarah's achievements marked a complete transformation from the skepticism and doubt that had characterized her arrival at basic training. Her consistent high performance had not only earned her personal success, but had also contributed to broader understanding of effectiveness in military service. She had proven herself through the most demanding measure possible: actual performance under challenging conditions. As the graduation ceremony concluded and new soldiers prepared to depart for their next assignments, Sarah reflected on the journey she had completed and the path that lay ahead. She had achieved her goal of successful military service while exceeding every expectation placed upon her. More importantly, she had done so while maintaining the values and principles her grandfather had instilled in her about dedication, perseverance, and service to others. The challenges she had faced and overcome during basic training had prepared her not only for continued military service, but also for the broader leadership responsibilities that her exceptional performance had made possible. She understood that her future assignments would bring new tests and opportunities to demonstrate her capabilities, and she looked forward to those challenges with the same determination that had carried her through basic training. Her success represented more than personal achievement. It demonstrated the importance of measuring military effectiveness through performance, rather than assumptions. The recruits who had initially questioned her presence had learned valuable lessons about the nature of military capability. and the importance of keeping an open mind about who could contribute effectively to military objectives. These lessons would serve them well throughout their own military careers. 6 months after graduation from basic training, Private Sarah Martinez had established herself as one of the most promising junior soldiers in her assigned unit at Fort Carson. Her exceptional performance during advanced infantry training had earned her rapid promotion opportunities and increasing responsibilities within her company. The tactical skills and leadership abilities she had demonstrated during basic training continued to develop as she took on more complex assignments and worked with experienced soldiers who recognized her potential. Sarah's current assignment involved working as part of a reconnaissance team that conducted advanced scouting operations for larger military units. The work required exactly the combination of technical skill, tactical awareness, and mental resilience that she had demonstrated throughout her training. Her team leader, Staff Sergeant James Rodriguez, had specifically requested her assignment to his unit after reviewing her training records and observing her performance during joint exercises. The reconnaissance team operated with significant independence, often spending days in forward positions gathering intelligence and monitoring potential threats. Sarah's analytical approach and attention to detail made her particularly effective at processing and reporting the complex information that these missions generated. Her ability to remain calm under pressure and make sound tactical decisions had already contributed to several successful operations. Rodriguez had become something of a mentor to Sarah, recognizing her potential for advancement and providing guidance that helped her develop both technically and professionally. His own background included extensive combat experience in multiple theaters, and he understood the qualities that distinguished truly effective soldiers from those who merely met basic requirements. Sarah's combination of capabilities impressed him more each month. "Martinez has something special that you don't see very often," Rodriguez told Captain Williams during one of their regular personnel reviews. "She has the technical skills and tactical awareness you'd expect from much more experienced soldiers, but she also has this intuitive understanding of how different pieces of information fit together to create actionable intelligence. That's not something you can teach. It's something people either have or they don't." Captain Williams had been observing Sarah's development closely since her arrival at Fort Carson, and he agreed with Rodriguez's assessment. "Her training scores were exceptional, but what impresses me most is how she's continued to improve and take on additional responsibilities," he said. "She's the kind of soldier you want to give challenging assignments to because you know she'll find a way to accomplish the mission and probably exceed your expectations in the process." The conversation between Rodriguez and Williams took place as they prepared for a visit from senior leadership that would include comprehensive evaluations of unit readiness and personnel performance. Colonel Marcus Harrison, the same officer who had overseen Sarah's basic training graduation, was scheduled to conduct a detailed review of current operations and assess the development of promising junior personnel. Colonel Harrison's visit was part of a broader initiative to identify soldiers with potential for accelerated advancement and specialized training opportunities. The military was actively seeking individuals who could take on increased responsibilities in response to evolving security challenges and changing operational requirements. Sarah's name had appeared on several lists of recommended personnel for consideration. The day of Colonel Harrison's visit began with standard operational briefings that covered current mission status, recent accomplishments, and ongoing challenges faced by the unit. Sarah participated in these briefings as part of her regular duties, providing detailed intelligence reports from recent reconnaissance operations. Her presentations were clear, comprehensive, and demonstrated the kind of analytical thinking that had characterized her military service. Colonel Harrison listened to Sarah's briefings with interest, noting the quality of her analysis and the confidence with which she presented complex information. While he remembered her impressive basic training performance, he was seeing new dimensions of her capabilities, as she demonstrated how those foundational skills had developed through practical application in operational assignments. Following the formal briefings, Colonel Harrison conducted individual meetings with soldiers who had been identified as having exceptional potential for advancement. Sarah was among those selected for these personal evaluations, which provided opportunities for senior leadership to assess not only technical capabilities, but also character, motivation, and readiness for increased responsibilities. The individual meeting took place in a private office where Colonel Harrison could speak candidly with Sarah about her experiences, career objectives, and perspectives on military service. The conversation began with routine questions about her current assignments and professional development, but gradually evolved into a more substantial discussion about her background and the factors that had contributed to her military success. Martinez: "Your performance since basic training has been outstanding," Colonel Harrison said as he reviewed her personnel file. "Your supervisors consistently rate you among their most effective soldiers, and your technical capabilities continue to exceed expectations. I'm interested in understanding more about your background and what motivated you to pursue military service with such dedication." Sarah described her family background, including her grandfather's military service, and the influence his stories and values had on her own desire to serve. She spoke about growing up with an appreciation for the sacrifices that military service required and a desire to contribute to something larger than herself. Her explanation was sincere and reflected genuine commitment to military values and objectives. Colonel Harrison was impressed by Sarah's articulation of her motivations and the maturity of her perspective on military service. "Your grandfather's influence clearly provided you with a strong foundation for military life," he said. "I'd be interested in hearing more about his service background and how his experiences shaped your understanding of what military service involves." Sarah explained that her grandfather had served as a reconnaissance specialist during the Vietnam War, where he had earned several decorations for valor under fire. She described how his stories about military brotherhood and the importance of reliable intelligence had influenced her own interest in reconnaissance work. His emphasis on attention to detail and calm decision-making under pressure had become central principles in her own approach to military duties. The conversation continued as Colonel Harrison asked about specific experiences that had been particularly challenging or rewarding during Sarah's military service. She described several recent operations where her reconnaissance team had provided critical intelligence that contributed to mission success. Her analysis of these experiences demonstrated both professional competence and the kind of strategic thinking that indicated potential for advancement to positions of greater responsibility. As their discussion progressed, Colonel Harrison noticed that Sarah occasionally adjusted the sleeves of her uniform in a way that suggested she might be covering something on her forearms. While military regulations allowed for certain types of tattoos, soldiers were generally expected to ensure that any body art remained concealed during official duties. His curiosity was prompted not by concern about policy violations, but by professional interest in learning more about this exceptional soldier. "Martinez, I hope you don't mind my asking, but do you have tattoos that you're keeping covered?" Colonel Harrison asked. "I'm not concerned about any policy issues, but as someone with my own military tattoos, I'm always interested in the stories and meanings behind the body art that soldiers choose to get. Often those tattoos tell important stories about military service and personal values." Sarah hesitated momentarily before responding, clearly uncertain about how much personal information was appropriate to share during an official evaluation meeting. "Yes, sir, I do have some tattoos," she said. "They're related to my family's military service, and they have significant personal meaning for me. I keep them covered during duty hours in accordance with regulations, but they're an important part of my connection to military traditions." Colonel Harrison sensed that there was more to the story behind Sarah's tattoos than a simple family tribute. His years of military experience had taught him to recognize when soldiers had deeper personal connections to their service than they initially revealed. "Would you be comfortable showing me?" he asked. "I understand if you prefer to keep that private, but I've found that military tattoos often tell fascinating stories about dedication and sacrifice." After a moment's consideration, Sarah decided to share this personal aspect of her military identity with the colonel. She rolled up her right sleeve to reveal an intricate tattoo that covered most of her forearm. The design was immediately recognizable to anyone with extensive military knowledge. It was a detailed reproduction of the insignia worn by reconnaissance specialists during the Vietnam War, surrounded by specific unit designations and geographic references. Colonel Harrison's reaction was immediate and intense. His professional demeanor shifted to one of profound recognition and respect as he studied the details of Sarah's tattoo. The unit designations and geographic references were not generic military symbols. They were specific identifiers that told the story of particular operations and individual acts of heroism during one of America's most challenging military conflicts. "Martinez," Colonel Harrison said, his voice carrying a tone of genuine awe, This tattoo represents the 5th Special Forces Group, specifically the reconnaissance teams that operated in the Central Highlands during 1967 and 1968. These unit designations refer to some of the most dangerous and important intelligence-gathering operations of the entire Vietnam conflict. How do you have access to this level of specific detail about these operations? Sarah's response revealed the extraordinary nature of her family's military legacy. Sir, my grandfather was Sergeant First Class Roberto Martinez, reconnaissance team leader for operations in exactly those areas during those time periods, she said. The tattoo incorporates specific details from his service record, including operations that remained classified until relatively recently. He earned the Distinguished Service Cross for actions during Operation Phoenix, and this tattoo honors both his service and the teammates who didn't make it home. The revelation stunned Colonel Harrison into momentary silence. Sergeant First Class Roberto Martinez was a legendary figure among reconnaissance specialists, known throughout the military community for extraordinary heroism under the most dangerous conditions imaginable. His exploits during Operation Phoenix had become the subject of case studies in military academies, and his tactical innovations were still taught to special operations personnel decades after his service. Your grandfather is Roberto Martinez? Colonel Harrison asked, his voice reflecting both disbelief and deep respect. Sergeant Martinez's actions during the Central Highlands operations saved literally hundreds of lives and provided intelligence that changed the course of multiple major operations. His tactical reports are still studied by Special Forces personnel today. He's considered one of the most effective reconnaissance specialists in military history. Sarah nodded, clearly moved by the colonel's recognition of her grandfather's service. He never talked much about the specific details of what he did over there, she said, but when I decided to pursue military service, he shared some of his experiences and helped me understand what real military excellence looks like. This tattoo represents my commitment to live up to the standards he set and honor the memory of the soldiers he served with. Colonel Harrison continued to study the tattoo, noting additional details that revealed the depth of Sarah's understanding of her grandfather's service. The design included subtle references to specific battles, geographic locations, and even individual soldiers who had served alongside her grandfather. The level of historical accuracy and personal detail represented a profound connection to military heritage that went far beyond simple family pride. The detail in this tattoo is extraordinary, Colonel Harrison said. These geographic references represent some of the most classified operations of the Vietnam era. Your grandfather must have shared very specific information with you about his service to enable this level of accuracy. That suggests a level of trust and respect that indicates your own commitment to military values impressed him significantly. Sarah explained how she had worked with her grandfather over several months to design the tattoo, researching historical records and interviewing other veterans to ensure accuracy in every detail. The process had deepened her understanding of military sacrifice and strengthened her resolve to pursue her own military career with the same dedication her grandfather had demonstrated. The tattoo represented not just family history, but a personal commitment to military excellence. The conversation that followed this revelation transformed Colonel Harrison's entire perspective on Sarah's military potential. Understanding her family legacy provided context for the exceptional performance she had demonstrated throughout her training and service. Her capabilities were not simply individual achievements. They represented the continuation of a family tradition of military excellence that spanned generations. Martinez, this changes everything about how I understand your military service and potential, Colonel Harrison said. Your grandfather's legacy provides a foundation that explains the exceptional capabilities you've demonstrated. But more importantly, it suggests that you have access to military wisdom and understanding that goes far beyond what we can provide through standard training programs. The colonel's recognition of her family legacy meant more to Sarah than any official commendation or promotion could have provided. Having her grandfather's service acknowledged by someone of Colonel Harrison's stature validated not only her own military efforts, but also the sacrifices that had shaped her understanding of what military service truly meant. Colonel Harrison's demeanor had shifted from professional evaluation to something approaching reverence as he continued to absorb the implications of Sarah's family background. Roberto Martinez's reputation among senior military leaders was legendary, and discovering that his granddaughter was serving with equal distinction created a profound sense of continuity and tradition that resonated deeply with the colonel's own military values. I need to ask you something, Martinez, Colonel Harrison said. "Has anyone else in your chain of command been made aware of your family background and your grandfather's service record? This information could significantly impact how we approach your career development and the opportunities we make available to you." Sarah explained that she had generally kept her family background private, preferring to be evaluated based on her own performance rather than inherited reputation. While she was proud of her grandfather's service, she wanted to establish her own military identity and earn recognition through her individual achievements rather than family connections. The colonel understood and respected Sarah's approach, but he also recognized that her family legacy provided opportunities that could benefit both her career development and broader military objectives. "I appreciate your desire to be evaluated on your own merits," he said. "But your grandfather's experience and the knowledge you've inherited represent resources that could contribute significantly to current military operations and training programs." As their conversation continued, Colonel Harrison began to envision ways that Sarah's unique background could contribute to military effectiveness beyond her individual service. Her combination of inherited military wisdom, exceptional personal performance, and deep understanding of reconnaissance operations represented exactly the kind of capabilities that current military challenges required. The interview concluded with Colonel Harrison making immediate arrangements for Sarah's participation in advanced training programs and consideration for rapid promotion opportunities. Her family legacy, combined with her proven individual capabilities, marked her as someone with extraordinary potential for significant military contributions. The colonel understood that he had just discovered a soldier whose capabilities extended far beyond what her personnel file had indicated. Word of Colonel Harrison's discovery began to spread through military leadership channels as he shared his findings with other senior officers. Sarah's combination of family military heritage and individual excellence created immediate interest among commanders responsible for special operations, intelligence analysis, and advanced reconnaissance activities. Her name began appearing on lists for highly selective programs that few soldiers were ever considered for. The revelation about Sarah's family background also began to change how her immediate supervisors and colleagues understood her exceptional performance. Her tactical awareness, analytical capabilities, and calm decision-making under pressure were no longer surprising individual achievements. They represented the continuation of proven military excellence that had been passed down through direct family experience and guidance. Sarah herself was still processing the implications of having shared her family legacy with Colonel Harrison. While she remained committed to earning advancement through individual merit, she was beginning to understand that her grandfather's influence had prepared her for military opportunities that few soldiers would ever have access to. Her family heritage was not just personal history. It was a military asset that could contribute to current operational requirements. The stage was now set for Sarah's military career to accelerate in directions that would test the full scope of her inherited capabilities and individual potential. The recognition of her family legacy had opened doors to opportunities that matched the exceptional foundation her grandfather had provided and the remarkable performance she had consistently demonstrated throughout her military service. The weeks following Colonel Harrison's discovery of Sarah's family heritage brought a whirlwind of new opportunities and responsibilities that would have overwhelmed most junior soldiers. Advanced training programs, specialized assignments, and accelerated promotion tracks suddenly became available as senior military leadership recognized the extraordinary combination of inherited wisdom and individual capability that Sarah represented. Her grandfather's legendary status opened doors, but her own proven performance ensured that she was prepared to walk through them successfully. Within days of his revelation about Sarah's background, Colonel Harrison had initiated contact with multiple specialized units that could benefit from her unique combination of capabilities. Special Operations Command expressed immediate interest in evaluating her for advanced reconnaissance training. Intelligence divisions wanted to assess her analytical capabilities for strategic assessment roles. Training commands sought her input on developing improved methods for teaching reconnaissance and tactical awareness to new soldiers. Sarah found herself facing choices that most soldiers never encountered during their entire careers. The opportunities being offered represented pathways to the highest levels of military service, but they also required commitments and sacrifices that would fundamentally alter her military career trajectory. Each option offered different challenges and different ways to honor her grandfather's legacy while serving her country effectively. The Special Operations selection process was perhaps the most demanding opportunity available. The program required soldiers to demonstrate exceptional capabilities across every aspect of military service, while maintaining the mental resilience necessary for the most challenging and dangerous missions. Sarah's reconnaissance background and proven tactical abilities made her a strong candidate, but the physical and psychological demands would test every limit of her capabilities. Captain Rodriguez strongly encouraged Sarah to pursue the special operations track, believing that her analytical skills and tactical awareness would be invaluable in complex operational environments. "Martinez, you have exactly the combination of capabilities that special operations requires," he told her during one of their regular mentoring sessions. "Your ability to process complex information and make sound tactical decisions under extreme pressure is exactly what separates effective special operations personnel from conventional soldiers." The intelligence analysis track offered different but equally significant opportunities for advancement and contribution to military objectives. This path would leverage Sarah's exceptional analytical capabilities and her inherited understanding of reconnaissance operations to support strategic decision-making at the highest levels of military command. The work would be less physically demanding than special operations, but would require intellectual capabilities that few soldiers possessed. Colonel Harrison personally advocated for Sarah's consideration for intelligence roles, believing that her combination of field experience and analytical thinking could contribute significantly to current strategic challenges. "Martinez has demonstrated exactly the kind of multidimensional thinking that effective intelligence analysis requires," he explained to senior intelligence leadership. Her ability to understand both the technical aspects of reconnaissance and the broader strategic implications of intelligence information makes her an ideal candidate for advanced analytical roles. The training command opportunities represented a different approach to military contribution, focusing on developing and improving the methods used to prepare future soldiers for reconnaissance and tactical operations. Sarah's innovative techniques and proven teaching ability had been noticed throughout her career, and senior leaders believed she could contribute significantly to evolving military training programs. Master Sergeant Williams, who had observed Sarah's development since basic training, strongly supported her consideration for training roles. "Martinez has consistently demonstrated the ability to analyze complex challenges and develop effective solutions that other soldiers can learn and apply," he said. Her approach to problem-solving and her ability to communicate complex concepts clearly make her naturally suited for training and development responsibilities. After extensive consultation with mentors and careful consideration of her own career objectives, Sarah decided to pursue the special operations track while maintaining involvement with training development activities. The decision reflected her desire to serve in roles where she could contribute most directly to operational success, while also sharing the knowledge and techniques she had developed with other soldiers. The special operations selection process began with comprehensive evaluations that tested every aspect of Sarah's military capabilities. Physical fitness assessments pushed her to demonstrate endurance, strength, and agility under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Technical skill evaluations covered weapons proficiency, tactical awareness, navigation abilities, and dozens of specialized capabilities required for complex operations. Sarah's preparation for these evaluations reflected the same methodical approach that had characterized her success throughout military training. She studied every aspect of the selection process, developed specific training programs to address her areas of greatest challenge, and worked with experienced special operations personnel to refine her techniques and understanding of operational requirements. The physical demands of special operations selection tested Sarah's limits in ways that her previous military training had not approached. Extended endurance events, complex obstacle courses, and simulated combat scenarios under extreme stress pushed her smaller frame to its absolute maximum capability. Her innovative techniques and exceptional mental resilience allowed her to compete effectively, but the margin for error was minimal. Derek Phillips, who had become one of Sarah's strongest supporters since their basic training experiences, volunteered to assist with her preparation for special operations selection. His own military development had been significantly influenced by observing Sarah's approach to overcoming challenges, and he wanted to contribute to her success in pursuing advanced military roles. "Martinez, you changed how I think about military effectiveness and what it means to be a successful soldier," Phillips told her during one of their training sessions. "Watching you overcome every challenge through technique, determination, and tactical thinking taught me more about real military capability than anything else in my career." I want to help you succeed in special operations because I know you'll use those opportunities to serve our country with the same excellence you've shown in everything else. The psychological evaluations component of special operations selection tested Sarah's mental resilience and decision-making capabilities under the kind of extreme stress that characterized the most challenging military operations. Evaluators assessed her ability to maintain focus and effectiveness when facing situations designed to overwhelm cognitive processing and emotional stability. Sarah's performance during psychological evaluation exceeded all expectations, demonstrating mental toughness and emotional control that impressed even experienced special operations evaluators. Her ability to remain calm and make sound tactical decisions under extreme pressure reflected both natural capability and the mental discipline she had developed through years of challenging military service. The tactical evaluation phases tested Sarah's ability to plan and execute complex operations while adapting to changing circumstances. These exercises required her to demonstrate not only individual capabilities, but also leadership skills and the ability to coordinate with other special operations personnel in high-stress environments. Her performance during tactical evaluations showcased the full range of capabilities she had developed throughout her military career. Her analytical approach to problem-solving, combined with innovative tactical techniques and exceptional situational awareness, allowed her to excel in scenarios that challenged much more